Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnuhu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Back in the day, when someone was applying for a certain program in a school or a job, the way they accepted them into that school or job was probably based solely on IQ. What were your marks? Now our age has become more competitive, and many people may have the same IQ, the same academic strength. Now the deciding factor is not just IQ, but also EQ. Your emotional quotient. And specifically, are you well-rounded? What are your extracurriculars? What are your interests? If you were to be placed on an island forever, what 3 things would you bring? Now, one's emotional quotient is subjective. You cannot prove to me that you love your parents. You cannot prove to me that you love your kids. Paying for tuition, touching someone's feet, anyone can do that. You cannot prove that which is subjective. So to validate what I would write on an application, that I'm a service-oriented person, or this is my interest, you also have to put down references. Even to apply for a tourist visa for Bharat, for India, you have to put down a reference. Where are you going to stay? Who's going to look after you? References, yes? Now here we are, studying how to listen, how to learn, how to love, how to live. This is subjective. And if I can use a legal term to show how we're studying this, that legal term would be precedent. Precedent. This retreat, the theme of this retreat is, what would the wise do? The wise have set precedent when it comes to making certain choices. Precedent when it comes to thinking about a different matter. We see in movies with attorneys that when they find precedent, how strong they feel that this happened 20 years ago, or this happened in this particular circumstance. What the wise would do gives us support. that this person lived like this, that if I live like this, I will also be confident. I will also be courageous. I will also be content. Precedent in the form of support is needed now more than ever. I feel we live in a time where we are more and more and more isolated. Today I was commenting on gamers, commenting on people who work at home. It is hard to relate to people when you're behind a screen, correct? Today someone had brought me coffee, and by accident, I almost spilled this on my laptop. And suppose I did, and the caps lock got locked in. And now I'm writing an email to my wife, I'm thinking about you, but all in capitals. She'll think, hey, are you mad? What did I do? Because it's a screen. How can you feel someone through a screen? We tend to be more and more isolated, and it's hard to feel confident and courageous and content when you're alone, right? We are trying to understand and appreciate that the precedent for us is the Guru Shishya Parampara. That this support is not just the Guru in front of us, but is actually Acharya Shankara also, Bhagwan Vedvyasa, our original parent, Brahman. If you know you have the infinite on your team, if you know Gurudev has your back, can you ever feel confused or afraid or sad? Impossible. In Ramayana, at one point a lot of warriors were down. Sri Lakshmana was down, so Bhagwan Rama was down. Jambavan, Nala, Nila, Sugriva, everyone. And so someone had gone to Jambavan and said, all of these people are down. What are we going to do? So Jambavan said, is Hanumanji down? And that person says, no. He said, no problem then. Correct? If Hanumanji's up, then everyone will be strong. What would the wise do? We are trying to further our relationship with the wise. And the guru in front of us right now is Sri Kabir. We are learning how to listen and learn and love from someone who is illiterate. But Sri Kabir was a free and challenging human being. I don't want to call him a seeker because he's not. I don't want to call him a teacher because he's not that either. Just a free and challenging human being. And the reason for this, he had nothing to gain, and so nothing to lose. And only someone who has the highest has nothing to gain, isn't it? Then you can be free. Then you can challenge the establishment. You can call out Big Brother. Sri Kabir is a product of the Creator's grace. I'd shared that he was abandoned, that he had foster parents. Now these foster parents, they didn't have their own child, so how would Sri Kabir be fed? He couldn't be fed from Nima. She wasn't ready for that. So he had to be fed by a cow. But cows also, if there's no calf there, they don't lactate. It is shared that many times Sri Kabir as an infant, as a child, would just look eagerly at a cow. And that cow would begin to lactate. And that's how he would feed and be strong. That Sri Kabir has had darshan of so many divine beings, like Hanumanji. He and Hanumanji are friends. Kids say that, correct? And then they get educated. But for him, Hanumanji is his friend. Not just in theory, but in application. That Goswamiji offered him darshan also. Bhagwan's grace was Sri Kabir, and Sri Kabir furthered that grace by following what his guru taught him, Swami Ramananda. Swami Ramananda gave him the Rama mantra. And this is how Sri Kabir learned all that he did through this Rama mantra. This morning, we focused on learning. We know we can be more, and we need to be directed, guided in learning to be more. In the first Saki that we studied how we have to be careful about whatever we input into us, because whatever we input, we will also output. Today when we went to a field, and many of us were running around, many of us were also having heart attacks. Because we input so much food, but we don't output a lot. We're not in the best shape, correct? That's why I like athletics, and our family retreats especially. We have mandatory soccer games for 90 minutes. All the uncles, all the aunties, everyone has to play. And at the end of the game, many uncles, they're so red. They're red like that cloth over there. But that's their face. Their skin is brown, but now it's red. And they're miserable, like looking at me angrily. But then they say thank you because they realize what bad shape they're in. That's a blessing, no? To see, suppose one has a part of their skin that's becoming cancerous. If you can see it, that's a blessing. If you can't see it, if it's in this part of your back, that's dangerous then, right? You never seek treatment. Whatever you input, you are going to output. And what would the wise do? How would they begin? How would they work with this Saki? If you want to change, you have to change your role models. Who are those who are influencing you? You change your role models, you will change too. The next Saki we studied, with the right role model, we will realize that all is divine. The seas are divine, the forests are divine, the trees are divine. Nature is easy to see divinity. When people come to Niagara Falls, when they see the majesty of that majestic nature of that flow of water, they become quiet. But can we do the same working in a bank? Can we do the same being in traffic? All is divine. What would the wise do with this Saki? They would make the purpose of their life divinity. That if all is divine, what other purpose is there? There is no other purpose. My wife has shared with me that a learning for her, now that she's a mother, is prioritization has become black and white. Before it was more gray, but now it's black and white. Her priority is not just the safety, but the swasti of our son. For her, right now her world is only Vyasa. But for all of us, all is divine. What other purpose is there? Is it to become the CEO of a corporation? Is it to get into a private school? All is divine. That is what the wise would do, is make that their purpose. And in the next Saki, if all is divine, who else is divine? You are divine. Isn't that the essence of the Upanishads? Tattvamasi. You are divine. You can never feel insecure if you feel you're divine. All of us have insecurities, isn't it? The way we look, who our parents are, what we've accomplished or not accomplished in life. That insecurity. But if I know I'm divine, there can be no insecurity. Is there a more beneficial teaching than that? And what would the wise do with this Saki? If the purpose is to know the divine, then the path is virtue development. Virtue development. Mother Kunti, there's a famous stuti where Mother Kunti prays to Bhagavan Krishna, bless me with hardships. Because in hardships, I remember you. In English, we would say we learn more in adversity than prosperity. All of the hardships in our lives, that is to teach us to invoke virtues. And this is a blessing that the generation sitting on the chairs have, that the generation sitting on the floor does not have. Most of you emigrated from a country and immigrated into another country, into another culture, into another language, and on and on and on. For some of us, going from middle school to high school is most challenging. Correct? Going to a different school in the same state, how? The adversity that my parents faced has made them strong. They become good winners and good losers. We tend to become arrogant winners and crushed losers. Every experience we have is teaching us about virtue development. That's what the wise would do. That is their path. And sometimes this path becomes unclear. I feel unclear about this path. The fourth Saki we studied, not just all is divine, that you are divine, but our guide is divine. A Sadguru is lighting up Sat, the existence, the truth, the nobility. Our guide is divine. And our practice, or what the wise would do, is to always keep our guide in our prayers and in our contemplation. To talk to our Sadguru. To listen to our Sadguru. I talked about contemplation as that. I know a young adult who was an alcoholic, and he went through the full Alcohol Anonymous program. And to be part of this program, you need to have a patron. Someone who's also gone through that program. And it successfully has gone through that program. And that person becomes the patron or the sponsor for the person going through that program. And they know the burn, they know the hardship. And every time that person is struggling, they're to remember their patron, that they did it, which means I can do this also. Pray, contemplate, talk, listen. I've listened that there's more to me than I'm experiencing. I've learned now what that more is. Naturally, I start to express that. And so the third part of our framework now is not listening and learning, but loving. Now, our theme was called The Everlasting Love of Sri Kabir, and I know you wanted me to just go to that. But there's a lot of training that's required to love, isn't it? It's an art. We want everything fast. We just wanted the third discourse. We didn't want the first or second, and we're not coming to the fourth. But if that's the case, then we'll never learn the art of loving. Those will just be words to us, isn't it? I find in our environment a conundrum. Every one of us has knowledge, Jnana. Then how come we still feel the fear of death and the unknown and sorrow? We have Jnana, but Jnana is not pramana. It's not authoritative. Yes? If it's authoritative, we would act on it. And it's not pramana because we lack chitta shuddhi. With chitta shuddhi, with a mind that is balanced, a mind that is focused, a mind that is reflective, any jnana that comes into our life will be pramana. This is the danger I warned us about this Shastra Vasana. Without purity of mind, we will not have this knowledge to impact us. Do you agree? Do you feel this? So what should we be doing? Only dedicating ourselves to Chitta Shuddhi. With such a mind, all you need to study is Tattva Bodha. That's it. Introductory text. All the texts are teaching the same. Like Prince Arjuna, the Uttamadhikari, when Bhagavan Krishna says in Shloka 11, the wise do not grieve, the teachings end in that quarter, in that pada. There's a huge comma there that says for the living nor the dead. That's irrelevant. That's auxiliary teaching. The primary teaching is the wise do not grieve. 47 shlokas in chapter 1, 11 more in chapter 2, but there's 700 shlokas. This is Prince Arjuna. He is the alpha personality. He is the one with the most hits on Shadi.com. Wheatish complexion, tall, knows everything, best archer. He's the most romantic Pandava too. You may not know that. He is. We were chatting the other day, he told me. And still he needed 650 more shlokas to finally let go of that shoka, bhaya, moha. He stood up, picked up his bow, and engaged in his dharma. Chitta Shuddhi. Let us express this love. Our first Sakhi describes not a love for a person, because it still requires more training. This is a most relevant Sakhi. I'll chant, and then you can slowly afterwards. Eka sadhe sabasadhiya, sabasade eka jaya, jaise siche mulako, phule phale aghaya. Has anyone heard this Sakhi before? Okay. Repeat now. Eka sadhe sabasadhiya, sabasade eka jaya, jaise siche mulako, phule phale aghaya. Eka sade saba sadhya. Eka sade, when one accomplishes a single task, a purpose, sadhe, like sadhana, saba sadhya, then they've accomplished all tasks. However, saba sadhe, when we try to do all work, all tasks, eka jaya, even that one goes away. Jaise siche mulako, when one waters the roots of a tree, phule phale agaya, then you get you get flowers and fruits. Got it? We can continue to the next Sakhi. In this Sakhi, what Sri Kabir is teaching is the fallacy of multitasking. 600 years ago, this was written, that multitasking is a fallacy. Multitasking leads to failure. When one is able to engage in one direction, then that's the same as being able to move in all directions. Because I know how to do one, I can do another one and another one and another one. But if I try to go in all directions, I don't go in a single direction. And the comparison is, if I water one flower and one fruit, what's the smartest way to water? Water the roots, correct? Then by that you're watering the whole tree. I'm going to take this in a sattvic corporate sense. When you walk into a corporation, when you go to Apple's head office, which I don't even think is in America, at least taxes-wise I don't think is in America. If you walk into the head office of Google, if you walk into the head office of Microsoft, when you walk into that head office, what do you see? What do you see? Describe that scene to me. You see a desk and a receptionist. And what's behind that desk? A logo. And near that logo, you see a vision statement, isn't it? You see a vision statement. And possibly a mission statement. And possibly a action statement. This is what this logo represents. This is what this office moves with. Here we're talking about what is our task? What are we to move with? Here is our vision statement. And I'm going to go from here like a funnel. We'll make this more and more focused. Our vision statement is Sanatana Dharma. What does Sanatana mean? Eternal, give me another word. Unending or unchanging. Sanatana means unchanging. And dharma, duty is a very military word. Think of another word more relevant to us. Responsibility. Responsibility. What is our unchanging responsibility? All of us, forever. What are you breathing for? What are you doing? Our unchanging responsibility is to be independently joyous. This is the vision statement with which we have to move. Sanatana Dharma, our unchanging responsibility to be independently joyous. Understood? But maybe that's too broad, so we have to have a mission statement. How does this become more real? Our mission statement is self-development. Self-development. In Sanskrit, the word is yoga. Now, what does the world think about yoga? When I say yoga, what do you think? First, you think I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's not yoga, it's yoga. And yoga studios. And hot yoga. And dog yoga. But yoga means self-development. If I want to be independently joyous, I naturally have to engage in self-development. Correct? Mission statement. Self-development. That's our second SD. Now we come to our action statement. And that's a third SD. What S do students fear and what D do adults fear? Students, what S do you fear? Studying. And adults, what D do you fear? Discipline. Following what you've studied, isn't it? Study and discipline. When there's a study and a discipline, then naturally one's engaged in self-development, which naturally means one will be independently joyous. So here Sri Kabir is telling us, where should you be watering this tree? How should we be living? With study and discipline. Study that which will lead to independent joy, and then follow that. And watch how we grow as a person. Watch how we become independently joyous. That works for you. Okay, we'll make this more relative. What Sri Kabir is teaching in this Saki is Viveka. What is the English word for Viveka? Discrimination, correct? And I joked about this last year, so the next retreat we have, we'll make a huge banner and we'll write, please come to our discourses on discrimination. If you want to be discriminated against, come. Your permit will be revoked, correct? Viveka means prioritization. Prioritization. Sri Kabir is teaching us to prioritize our life. And this message is actually more relevant for where we are now. I find that the bigger a city one lives in, the more ambiguous one's priorities become. Especially when you join the workforce. What kind of job do I take up? How long should my commute be? Do I rent or own? When should I have children? Should I have children? Do I look after my parents? Do they live with me? Yes? What is my priority? Sri Kabir is saying, make your priority happiness. And when it comes to prioritization, Puja Swami Tejomayananda has written in Jivan Sutrani, and this is such a simple sutra, but profound also, you can live your life. Isn't it? Only you can live your life. If I'm thirsty and I watch you drinking water, does that quench my thirst? It makes me angry. How come I don't get water? Now that's just for thirst. Imagine happiness. If I'm sad and you're happy, does that make me happy? It's my life. I have to bring in that happiness. Only you can live your life. What did I say Sri Kabir's parents did? They were weavers. What was he forced to do? Be a weaver. Did he have a personality to be a weaver? Sri Kabir's parents were worried that he was useless at being a weaver. He just had no inclination towards doing that. But I told you, he was free. That he lived what he was born to do. When it comes to the schools and careers that you choose, your parents can certainly guide you, but they don't have to go to that school, isn't it? They don't have to engage in that career. When it comes to relationships, they can guide you to a relationship, but how long will they even be alive for that relationship? 20 years? 40 years? How long will you be in that relationship? 70 years? 80 years? I'm grateful to my parents. My parents encouraged us to be dharmic. They didn't specify that you have to do this. You have to go there. And I think that freedom allowed my sisters and I to be more free. When we are unclear about what's a priority, when we're unclear about our vision, what happens? When you try to do a lot, but you're actually not into what you're doing, what happens? Tell me what the effect of that is. Burnout, exactly. One starts to burn out. True? People who go hard in high school in every direction, when they go to university, they're burnt out. They can hardly fulfill their academic responsibilities. Or people go hard in university, then they lack the motivation to look after their health afterwards. Because they're trying to do all, which really means they're doing nothing. Prioritize happiness. I'll give you one more worldly example of this. At the age of 5, who was one of the most popular people in the entire world? Michael Jackson. At the age of 5, the whole world knew him. That was the first concert I ever went to. I was 5 years old. And my dad, I think my mother was more responsible, took me to a Michael Jackson concert. Michael Jackson never had a childhood, isn't it? Everywhere he went, people wanted to take photographs, be with him. And fascinatingly, as he became an adult, he was still living like a child, right? Living in Neverland, hanging out with kids. But if he was allowed to be a kid, in other words, he was allowed to be free, maybe he would have grown up to be a healthier adult. Maybe. When we try to do all, this burnout comes in the form of soft skills like forgiveness. Soft skills like patience, they're not developed. Everything is objective. Do this, go here, achieve this, gain this. Isn't it? I'm shocked at some of the homes I go to, after kids go to school, it's like they go to another school. More classes, more activities, and on and on and on. Kids aren't allowed to be kids anymore. That's torture. And again, it's because one doesn't know what one's vision is, what one's priority is. All of us should engage in one direction for the body, play a sport. All of us should do one activity for the development of the mind, something cultural. Learn a language, learn how to play an instrument. And one development for our intellect, that happens here on Sundays, Wednesdays, whatever. And the rest of the time, enjoy. Be free. Be a high school student. Be a college student. Be someone who's not married. Be someone who doesn't have a kid. Because once those responsibilities come in, they don't stop. And I don't mean that in be afraid. That's not my message at all. Be ready for those responsibilities. But if you're an adult, if you have too many responsibilities too fast, one is not living then. One's a robot. We keep bragging about artificial intelligence. We are artificial intelligence. The body's organic, but it's not like we think for ourselves. What would the wise do? I'm going to share it. Whether you're going to do it or not is a very different matter. What the wise would do is unitask. The wise do not multitask. When they drive, they drive. They don't text and drive. When they eat, they eat. They don't read magazines and eat. You know the place where we multitask the most? Tell me where we multitask the most. Everywhere, but more specifically, where? I think the shower. How many times have you showered and you're in the shower and you can't remember if you actually shampooed your hair or not? Did I use conditioner first and then shampoo? You know what brand it is? There's so many tasks going on. This is what I did yesterday. This is what's going to happen later in the day, and on and on and on. There's a simple saying that says, when you walk, walk. That's the end of the statement. When you walk, walk. Here, in this discourse, when you're in a discourse, be in the discourse. Before you go see a movie, what do you do? Suppose you're going to see a 9:10 show. If the movie starts at 9:10, tell me the sequence leading up to that movie. You get to the parking lot at, say, 8:45. You buy your ticket. You buy Dippin' Dots. Do you have Dippin' Dots here? You buy Dippin' Dots. You go to the restroom. You sit down, kind of take everything out of your pocket. Then the previews start. Your eyes adjust to the light, and then the movie begins. And you're there. But if you show up at the theater at 9:08, what happens? You run from your car, you slip a few times. You buy a ticket, but you're concerned you're not going to get a good seat. Can't get Dippin' Dots. You sit down, the movie's just started, and where are you? I don't know if I locked the car or not. 15 minutes later, I have to go to the bathroom, but I can't get up. So now you're just watching a movie feeling you have to go to the bathroom. Isn't it? I find many of us are like that with satsang too. We come right on time, or even if we're here ahead of time, we're talking. Right? When you're watching a preview and someone's talking, don't you get annoyed? And you're hoping, as soon as the movie starts, please God, make sure that they stop talking so I don't have to tell them to stop talking. Because you're clearly not tough enough to tell them. Unitasking. Try. I cannot tell you what a difference this will make in our lives. And that's why I'm going on and on and on with this. I'm going to say one more thing about this. If you want a field to practice unitasking, as soon as you enter a restroom, imagine there's a force field there where you cannot think of anything but what's happening in that restroom. Like they have soundproof studios. There are no other sounds than the studio sounds in that studio. So when you turn that tap on, you should turn the tap on. Feel the water, the soap. You should feel the toothpaste in your mouth, etc., etc., etc. And if you can do it in the bathroom, you'll extend that to breakfast. Then your drive. Then interacting with people. Imagine listening to people carefully. That happens. I go to people and I say, Hari Om. What did they say back? I'm good, how are you? I never asked you, how are you? I said, Hari Om. But that artificial intelligence, isn't it? You hear me saying, how are you? And you say, good, how are you? But you've also not processed that. You call out people on this, not tomorrow or Monday, because you'll just be doing it to each other. But on Tuesday when you're at work, you're running your errands, you're at school, someone says, how was your weekend? You tell them it was horrible. I went in for a surgery, but they operated on the wrong limb. Just make up something ludicrous like that. And I assure you at least one person will say, me too. Unitask. When you unitask, you don't even have to say how are you to someone, and they will open their hearts to you. I've experienced this so many times where I'm with someone and they'll just start crying. Because they themselves are unitasking in that experience. In multitasking, we are asleep. And that's what they teach in business school, isn't it? I paid $20,000 a year to learn how to multitask. I went to Sandeepany for free to learn that all of that was wrong. That's what I'm showing you so tangibly. I learned information, but then I learned knowledge. When I learned information, I wasn't smiling. It was only when I learned knowledge that I started to smile. And I know we are the same in that regard. What would the wise do? Unitask. A similar sentiment is shared in our next Saki. Kuru bahiya bala apani chada birani asa jake angana nadi bahe so kasamare piyasa. Anyone? This Saki? Okay. Please repeat. Kuru bahiya bala apani chada birani asa Jaake angana nadi bahe, so kasamare piyasa. Kuru, do, bahiya, depend, apani. Apani means apna, your own, bala. Depend on yourself. Chada birani as, let go of expecting from others. Depend on yourself, let go of depending on others. Kids, what is the greatest gift you can give to your parents? Them to not have to worry about you. How? By being independent. This is what this Saki is teaching. Jaake, and the comparison. Jaake angana nadi bahe. Angana, your front yard, your courtyard. If there's a river that's flowing in your courtyard, so kasamare piyasa, how can you die of thirst? If there's a well, if there's a river in your courtyard, will you ever die of thirst? If you depend on yourself, will you ever be lacking? If you depend on someone else, will you ever be lacking? We will lack according to their lacking too, isn't it? Elaborating on this. Depending upon your strength. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, a famous and powerful shloka is where Bhagavan Krishna introduces Karma Yoga. And Bhagavan Krishna introduces this in a simple way. You have karma and then you have phala. You have the actions and you have the results. Let's focus on the results first. Results are in your control or out of your control. In control or out of control? Results. Out of your control. This Saki says, do not depend on that which is not in your control. Results in the past, present, or future. When are results coming? Future. Again, not in your control. Now let's switch to actions. Actions in your control or out of your control? In your control. Actions in the past tense, present tense, or future tense? Present tense. This Saki is teaching us to engage in Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is, now that you're unitasking, unitask with what your responsibilities are. And the more that one is engaged in their actions naturally, what will be the result? Probably the results that you want. But if I keep thinking about the results, I probably won't get the results that I want. When you write exams, what are you thinking about? Tell me. As the exam is happening, what are you thinking about? How hard the question is, okay? What else? Your marks that are going to come after the exam. If you keep thinking about the marks that will come after the exam, what are you not thinking about? Actually creating those marks, isn't it? So how are those marks going to be? I think our university and college lives would completely change if we actually, it's not that we just quote Karma Yoga, but we actually follow this teaching to focus on your action. Before an Acharya speaks, genuinely one would try to remember that it is the Guru Shishya Parampara that's flowing. But for whatever reason, if I'm distracted and I'm speaking and thinking, I hope she really likes me. I hope that person understands. That person in the back looks like a big Dakshina person. I'm going to keep looking at them. As I'm doing that, I'm unable to connect the dots of how I want this to flow, isn't it? There's so many breaks, like a poor internet connection or a poor phone connection. It's frustrating, isn't it? When I was in Bharat and I was trying to FaceTime Sheila and Vyasa, it was frustrating because there was never a strong enough connection to see Vyasa. He would hear my voice, but he didn't know where I was. Where was I? At least with the phone, he tries to hold that phone. Focus on your actions. When we focus on our actions, we let go of expectations. I'll give you a sutra about expectations. Expectations are exhaustion. Expectations are exhaustion, especially in family. No one can frustrate you like your, fill in the blank, spouse. No one can disappoint you like your child. Your spouse cannot disappoint you like your child can. Children, you know, correct? See, when your parents say they're mad at you, yeah, they'll get over it. But if that word disappointment comes out, something heavy just happened. Right? We tend not to hear our parents say, I'll say to Sheila, you disappoint me. That's not, frustrate, yes, but disappoint, no. And why did that all happen, that frustration or disappointment? Because of expectations. Think, if that expectation wasn't there, would you be frustrated? Would you be disappointed? No way. And why is there expectation? Another word for expectation is result, isn't it? Depending on another being. Shri Kabir is saying, expectations are exhaustion. And there's a most powerful story in Srimad Bhagavatam that teaches this dharma. When Raja Parikshita is traveling through his kingdom because he's heard that Kali, the spirit of selfishness, is living in his kingdom. He starts traveling through that kingdom trying to find this selfishness. And he comes across this scene where this person dressed in black with a cane is beating a bull. And this bull has 3 legs that are broken, that are crippled. And this person is about to cripple that 4th leg. And Raja Parikshita rides in with his horse and jumps off that horse and tells that person to stop. And this person knows this is the king. He says, I'll deal with you. And then he looks to that bull and says, is this man the reason that you're crying? The bull is crying, the cow that's near the bull is crying also. That bull then starts to laugh at the king of the kingdom. And Raja Parikshita is surprised by this. Why are you laughing? And this bull says, Raja, what's funny is you think that another person can cause me sorrow. That bull is saying, you think that another person can cause me sorrow. And if you want to go deeper into this, it's laughable to think another person can cause you joy. If it's laughable for someone to think that someone can cause you sorrow, then it goes the other way too. That bull represents dharma. One who is responsible knows the joys and sorrows in their life is because of them. Powerful, no? All of the joys and sorrows in our lives are our responsibility. By depending on another, we're giving up that responsibility. Now, some people may be thinking, that's impractical. Objective expectations are fine. Before I walked into this room, I filled up my water from that fountain outside. I have an objective expectation that clean water is going to come from that fountain. I didn't come up with my kit. I had a UV ray testing. It's objective. We drove today. When you take your first driving test in Ontario, you have to walk around the whole car to make sure everything visually looks okay, like a pilot in a plane. Now, when you drive your car, do you still do that? Do you walk around? You just have an objective expectation that your brakes will work, isn't it? In a family, you have an objective expectation that there's gas in the car, that there'll be milk in the fridge. That's all fine, that's functional. But the subjective expectation is that you should complete me. Isn't it? I think there's that movie, Jerry Maguire, where he has this dialogue saying, you complete me, you had me at hello, and then you complete me. Wrong. Inaccurate. I should write to IMDb. That's a false misrepresentation of the truth. What would the wise do? How the wise would use this sati is they would enjoy their own company. Enjoy your own company. And Puja Swami Chinmayananda spins this humorously. If you don't enjoy your own company, why do you inflict it upon others? Isn't it true? If you don't love yourself, what makes you think you can love another person? If you're not friendly to yourself, how will you be friendly to another person? Invoke that love so it naturally flows. Learn to enjoy your own company. What is the gauge of someone who doesn't like themselves? An objective gauge of someone who doesn't like themselves so much. They talk a lot. And I have to talk because you've asked me to talk. But you find people who talk a lot is because they're scared. Scared of silence. They call it an awkward silence. They're scared of being alone. But if you enjoy your own company, you don't need to talk. Great example of that is the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Who's speaking the most? Duryodhana. Because he's scared. Who speaks the next most? Prince Arjuna. What's Bhagavan Krishna doing? Enjoying. He doesn't believe in awkward silences. But then Prince Arjuna asks him to talk, so he talks. Otherwise, enjoying his own company. This is why we practice mauna in these retreats. Mauna is when you keep your mouth closed and you're all engaging in mauna fine. And to help you keep your mind open. Mouth closed, mind open. When my mouth is open, my mind becomes closed unnecessarily. Okay? Another sati. We're not focusing on listening. We already know there's more to us than meets the eye. We're not focusing on learning. We've already learned how to nourish that more. Now we're focusing on loving. Loving ourselves. That's what I'm talking about, unitasking. I'm talking about enjoying your own company. If you learn to love yourself, next, you can love others. When we talk about love, we only take it in reference to loving others, but you cannot without training. When a child is 6 years old or 8 years old, where do they go traditionally? To the Gurukula preschool. To the Gurukula is where they should go. And they live there for 12 years. And what do they learn? How to love themselves. And what happens then? Then they are married. Now so many people are scared of marriage because they don't love themselves. But you learn to love yourself. Next, you practice with a person. Children, a whole other side of the family, then your community, then society, then humanity. Tomorrow our focus on living is not just a person, all of humanity. Vishaya tyaga vairaga he samata kahiye nyan sukadai sabajiva so Yahi bhakti paramana. Check. Anyone? Saki? Okay. Please repeat. Vishaya tyaga vairaga he. Samataka hi ye jnana. Sukadayi sabajiva so. Yahi bhakti paramana. Vishaya. What is the English word for Vishaya? Sense pleasures. Now think carefully of this word. Within the word Vishaya is the word Vish. Vish means poison. Within pleasure, I said there is pain. Another word you can think of is poison. Vishaya. Tyaga. What is the English word for tyaga? Renounce. Give me a better word. To be independent. To be independent from Vishaya is known as Vairagya. To be free of Vishaya, to be free of dependency on pleasure is independence. Vairagya. Who can practice Vairagya? All of us, no? Do you have to be a boy to practice Vairagya? Do you have to have a long beard to practice Vairagya? Do you have to say dacoit instead of dacoit to practice Vairagya? And you're laughing, but a lot of us think that, isn't it? You have to have a particular form and name to be a Vairagi. Sri Ramana has shared, the one who believes they're a body is a samsari. The one who believes they're not the body is a sannyasi. What is the determination of a samsari and sannyasi? Identification. How do you identify? Based on the ego. How deep that is. Samata kahiye jnana. And the indicator, the gauge of jnana, the gauge of knowledge is samata. Samata means evenness, balance. Jnana is to make us balanced. So many of you who have been eating meals with me, I've been asking you about life. How's life? How are you? And almost every one of you has said, I'm stressed. I have stress. Why? School. The same place where you learn jnana is making you imbalanced, isn't it? Fascinating and sad. Sukadayi sabajiva saha. One should be engaged in sukadayi, giving sukha to sabajiva, to all. Once you learn to love yourself, your role, and your responsibilities, only then can you start to love others. Yahi bhakti paramana. This is known as the highest devotion. We believe that the service of our country is service of the Lord of Lords. And devotion to the people is devotion to the Supreme Self. Let's open this up. Raga. Give me a Hindi word that sounds like a raga. Hindi word. Rang, no? What does rang mean? When you think of rang, what color do you think of? Red, no? And then you think of Holi. And you think of Amitabh Bachchan saying, Ranga Barse. And see how we went from raga to, oh, back in the day I used to play like this. Raga means color. You and I live and we interact with the world based on the color of our personality, our prejudices, our biases. our judgments. Correct? I was sharing with our Atma Bodha students recently, in the last 10 years, one of the most difficult aspects of the work that I do is people have a very limited idea of someone who's dedicated to Sanatana Dharma. Because I wear white, because I only have a little bit of white hair, because I have a Canadian accent, I speak English. You also have an accent, but you don't speak English. You speak American. It's hard for me to do this work because our notion is that you should wear a different color, that you should have a lot of white hair, that the accent that you speak with should be not Canadian or American, but should be Indian. See the prejudices, the biases, the notions that people come with, the raga. I experienced this. I'm not telling you this as a theory. And here Sri Kabir is saying, viraga. Be without this color. Be without prejudice. Be without bias. Be without judgment. And in a big picture, see God's world as God's world. Because with this color, you're seeing it as the ego's world. Who has this judgment? It's not my hand. My hand is not judging you right now. It is my ego that says, why do you think like that? How come you don't act like me? That's how we live, isn't it? I once spoke at a diversity conference at an all-girls school. So 300 high school students, some males were invited also, and their teachers, administrators, parents. And I come in, dhoti, kurta, tilak. They're all talking, then they're all staring. And without saying a single word in their minds, who is he? What is he doing here? And then I was introduced as the speaker. And I told them openly at a diversity conference that none of you have spoken a single word, but every one of you is judging me right now. Isn't it? We have this habit to do this. That's the expression of ego, isn't it? Separation, dvaita. And here, Sri Kabir is saying, engage in viraga. See, he's pointing out this idea of sense objects. I'm just taking this to a deeper level. Let go of this sense of separation. When we do that, what happens is balance. I'm making this more relative. Are you ever lusty towards yourself? Do you ever look in the mirror and say, whoa, you are a good-looking person? Do you ever want to go out sometime? Can I have your number? Sure, let me just check my phone. You dial yourself, hey! That's a hallucination. You cannot be lusty towards yourself. Do you ever exert power over yourself? I'll teach you a lesson. You can't. See, when someone stops engaging in trying to complete themselves through pleasure, when they let go of this separation, they become balanced. They have more physical energy, more mental energy. And the next point is then you should create happiness, sabajiva, for all people. You can only give what you have. And if you don't have it, you cannot give it. But once I have physical energy, because I'm not someone who's pleasure-seeking, I have mental energy, I'm not someone who separates us. Now I have so much balance, so I can help others be balanced too. Isn't it? In athletics, if you're falling and I'm balanced, I can help you. But if I'm falling and you're falling, I'm not going to help you. I'll keep my hands to myself. You fall there, I'll fall here. That's when Bhagavan, when Prince Arjuna is falling, who does he reach out to? achyuta. Chuta means fall. Achyuta means never fallen, never will fall. You can only give what you have. The gauge of jnana is balance. And Sri Kabir is illiterate. He doesn't have information, but he certainly has jnana. Tomorrow I will tell you about the death threats against Sri Kabir. Just like against Gurudev, no? Your head will explode, your tongue will fall off. He laughed. Nothing to gain, nothing to lose. He loved himself, so he was able to love us too. Role models right here. I'd asked all of you about the greatest gift that you can give your parents. I'm going to spin this a different way. Another great gift you can give your parents is to help them reduce their vasanas. Isn't it? I can buy my mother a trip to Bahamas, but you can too. I can hold my mother's suitcases, but you can too. I can clean my mother's sink, but you can too. But helping my mother reduce her vasanas, if she can't do it, I can help her do it. Correct? And how? As I reduce my vasanas, and if I'm able to reduce my vasanas completely, my whole lineage experiences the same then. Like the deepest form of love for your spouse, your parents, your kids, your siblings is to be enlightened. With your enlightenment, you are able to create for the people around you what they cannot create for themselves. When we talk about goodwill for all people, an enlightened person reduces the vasanas of all beings. That's goodwill. That's bhakti. What would the wise do? The wise would simplify their wants to their needs. They would simplify their wants to their needs. So they live their lives not for wants, but for needs. And now that they have simplified their lives, with simple living comes high thinking. With simple living, they're able to focus on others. But if I have a very complex way of thinking, I'm always trying to balance my own emotions, I can't help you then. I cannot focus on you. Simple living, high thinking. The wise live simply. They live with just by needs, so they have lots and lots and lots of resources and time and effort to give for the goodwill of all beings. This was a focus of Sri Kabir. He gave a lot of importance to wealth equality. 600 years ago, the rich were here and the poor were here. 600 years later, the rich are here and the poor are here, no? Capitalism. Capitalism only works for the 1%, especially now in our form of governance, isn't it? And we keep driving that. The good schools keep becoming better, and the bad schools keep becoming worse. You know how expensive it is just to be a vegetarian? Even more expensive to be a vegan. But to eat garbage, they're practically giving it away for free. Yes? And it's because we have no importance for wealth equality. Wealth equality also stands for opportunity equality. Man, woman doing the same job. Woman, how much are you getting paid? 2/3. How? Did you choose your gender? How is it that your brain and this person's brain are the same, but because you have a female body and this person has a male body, you only deserve 2/3 of the pay? Tomorrow I'm going to hammer that point. Just through Sri Kabir, he has no tolerance for the demeaning of women. Zero tolerance. This is written 600 years ago. Imagine people actually followed this. how different society would be. Last Saki for today. Are you learning? Enjoying? You have to say yes, I know. It's okay. I'm good with that. Even if you have to say yes, fine. This is most deep. हम तुम प्यारे एक है, कहना सुनन को दोई, मन से मन को तोलिए, दो मन का बहु न होई. Check, anyone? Have you heard this? Good. Repeat. हम तुम प्यारे एक है, कहन सुनन को दोया, मन से मन को तोलिए, दो मन का बहु न होया. Hum, me. Tum, you. I think that's a Hindi movie, right? Hum, tum. They copied that. Hum, tum, pyare. Who is he talking to? Us. He's not calling us Muda here. He's calling us pyare, Soumya, Tata, in such loving words. Eka hai. I and you are one. Kahana, saying, sunana, listening, ko, doya. In saying we may be two, in listening we may be two, right? For name's sake. We have to use these physical orientations, I and you, but it's only an orientation. Manase manako tauliye. If you weigh up your mind and my mind, if you match up my mind and your mind, do mana kabahuna hoy, there can never be two minds. When our minds are put together, they are the same mind. So opening this up. When Vali was killed, and he wasn't, we call it Vali Mrityu Prasanga. This is an episode on Vali's death. Actually, it's Vali Moksha Prasanga, isn't it? Vali is not killed, he is freed. And so is his wife, and so is his son. Tara comes over there, totally rattled, hair open, crying, falling. Tara is Vali's wife. And she says to Bhagwan Rama, what am I supposed to do now without my husband? And Bhagwan Rama says, if your husband is this body, he's in front of you. Isn't it? He's there. And if your husband is the spirit, he's everywhere. He says this in another line, the body is perishable, so there's no need to weep. The spirit is imperishable, so there's no need to weep. Our bodies, though we look different, are made up of the exact same elements, isn't it? There's a Hindi movie I remember. I think Nana Patekar is in this. He cuts his hand, he cuts another hand and mixes the blood and says, now tell me, who's Hindu and who's Muslim? I have a blood donation card. It tells me my blood type. It doesn't tell me my religion. Correct? Our minds are also quite the same. When I say Hawaii, where are all of you right now? Vivekji, we were already there. You speak, we daydream. And then if you come to the spirit is existence. How many existences are there? How many awarenesses are there? How many joys are there? Only one. Here Sri Kabir is pushing us to Advaita, to oneness, and that Dvaita is only in the form of expression. There's Advaita, but Sri Kabir loved Bhagwan Rama. I told you his mantra was Rama, but he never forgot that he and Bhagwan Rama are one, only in expression. For Vyasa, because he's so innocent as an infant, he sees parents in two bodies, but he has no real difference between mother and father. He doesn't know if he's a boy or a girl, isn't it? As he starts to, he doesn't know his own name right now. When he does hear the word Vyasa more, he won't say, I'm hungry. He's first going to say, Vyasa is hungry. All infants are like that. It's not just my son. My son's so smart. All infants are like that. Because they don't know this is me, or Vyasa is I. He keeps hearing Vyasa, so he's going to say Vyasa is hungry. Amazing. And then he will be educated. Your mother's like this. My father's like this. But for me, he'll say, my father's like this. We are all the same. Full out. We are all the same. Someone had once asked me, Vivekji, can you bring people back to life? And I explained to this person about medical death, biological death, philosophical death. Not important, we'll leave that there. And then he said, Vivekji, can you read people's minds? And I leaned in close and said, yes. To freak him out, that's like a sattvic way of enjoying, what other enjoyment opportunities do you have? But then I explained, the more that I know my mind, it's the same as me knowing your mind, isn't it? The more you know your mind, the more you know my mind. Our minds are not different. 100 hours a week for 12 years, all I do is study my own mind. And so I can know 0.1% more about your mind. Sheila tells me often how scared she is that I just know what she's thinking. And she's my wife, so it's even easier because we've been married for almost 8 years now. And I feel a lot of it is due to the Vedantic training that the more I learn to know my mind, the more I can adapt to her mind. I think the best way to be in a relationship is go to the Gurukula. Isn't it fascinating you need to have a test to be able to drive, but you don't have to have a test to get married? And even worse is you don't have to have a test to be a parent. What mad society do we live in? This is just a machine and I have to go through all of this testing. This is a human being. And if wrongly, they may create a cycle of raising more people in an unhealthy way. My mother-in-law is a forensic psychiatrist. We talk about the cyclical behavior of generation after generation. We are all the same. And so what would the wise do? Knowing this Saki, that when someone is speaking, listen to them fully. And when you're speaking to them, speak to them fully. Listening fully means try to identify with them. Speak to them fully means identify with them. Isn't it? Someone had asked me, when you speak in corporations, then, how do you speak? They said, how do they receive it? And I said they receive it actually better than some of these environments because they want it and they don't take it for granted. And the difference is, in those environments, I have to be ultra simple because they want it, but they're not exposed to this. In these environments, I'm taking for granted that you already know about the subtle body, as an example. Isn't it? That you have the definition of spirit. Listen fully. Speak fully. We've now studied 12 sakis. I feel like I've shared 12 different references to what the wise would do. Now, looking at me and not your notes. Going back to the first saki, okay? You don't need to know the language. Some of this language is Rajasthani, some Punjabi, some Urdu. It is hard to chant this, actually. Sanskrit is easier because it's more objective. This is more difficult to chant. People say it's easier, but I find it to be more difficult. Especially the musical part. What is happening? What would the wise do with the first saki? Don't look at your notes. Vivekji, we never took notes. It's okay. They would celebrate their birthdays differently, thinking about the past and where they're going. Second saki. Second saki. I have to check my notes. The second saki was talking about every day waking up and asking oneself if they're more confident, courageous, and content. This third saki was to change, to invoke kripa, that grace is those thoughts of change. What would the wise do with the fourth saki? To never waste. Specifically, never waste time. In the fifth saki, what would the wise do? If we want to change now, we have to change our role models. And with the right role model, in the sixth saki, we know our purpose is God. Goat. Goat is greatest of all time, because some people weren't here. You just said God and goat in the same sentence. Greatest of all time. But you know what's cool about that? One of the words to describe Brahman is Ajaha, isn't it? And what does Ajaha also mean? Goat. See, they copied. Freely, they take from Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is like Google, open source. Take, no problem. No doership here. The seventh saki, when I know that the purpose is God, and the seventh is the path is virtue development. Because God is virtue, so when I practice those virtues, that's leading me to God. What would the wise do with the eighth saki? Remember your guide, Sadguru. Pray, you talk. Contemplate, you listen. Then we studied our ninth saki. We're starting to, now that we've learned this, we're starting to implement this. We're starting to invoke this, express this. And with our responsibilities, we have to unitask. What would the wise do in the 10th saki? To help us enjoy our responsibilities, we should also enjoy our own company. Until you are dead, you will have responsibilities. Once we are dead, there is no more dharma. As long as we are alive, there is dharma. Unitask. Enjoy your own company. In the 11th saki, simplify one's wants to needs. That is a fine definition of contentment. Contentment is wanting what you need. Wanting what you need is contentment. So what are our needs? Oxygen. Imagine, what do you want for Christmas? Oxygen. What do you want for Deepavali? Water. How content you would be then. And the 12th saki is listen fully, speak fully. What we are studying is most practical. And now we'll take our framework to fulfillment. Shri Kabir says, Hatha Yoga is like drinking wine. Hatha Yoga here, he's referring to asana and pranayama. Many organizations, many teachers, they claim that asana and pranayama is enlightenment, is samadhi. Correct? And you find those organizations to be extremely popular. But all they're doing is tricking people into thinking relaxation is freedom. Tricking people into thinking information is jnana. And that's why in such organizations they will never tell you to share what you've learned. Don't tell them about this kriya. This mantra is just for you. Here, free? Come, record everything. We're recording it for you. Isn't it? Hatha Yoga is like wine. He says, when we are listening and learning and loving, the fulfillment of this is called sahaja. Sahaja means open eye joy, open eye contemplation. Open eye here means every space, every time, every matter. No control. This is nitya. That will fulfill tomorrow. Narayana.